Kill the past is about learning to let go. It is a phrase, an idea, a philosophy that Goichi Suda expresses with his work in the video game industry. The essence of a career spanning about 25 years is contained in these 3 little words, a life work that he continues building upon to this day. Even with the titles under his company's belt that he has considerably little involvement in, we see shreds of this theme sprinkled onto the story and characters. Games like The Silver Case, Killer 7, and No More Heroes are tied together through this term that are a part of the same continuity, but it's also a common thread of themes that are dear to Suda as far back as his childhood. But what does kill the past mean? It can speak a different message depending on who's taking it in, and there's no concrete statement from the man himself. But I believe it means to face the things of your past that are currently weighing you down on your present. Until you do that, you won't be able to grow for the sake of your future. Before we get started, I want to thank my friends and fellow Grasshopper connoisseurs for being a great big help writing out this script. Dreambaum, Transmitter, and Jess. This video is a collaborative effort between all of us as a means to get more people into the lesser known work Suda created before No More Heroes, and how that shapes his work to this day. With No More Heroes 3 coming this year and a surprising number of people getting insanely hyped for the title, it behooves us to let people know the best way to prepare for what may be an enormous amalgamation of just about all of his previous titles. The ultimate entry to his Kill the Past series, so to speak. While viewers familiar with my Deadly Individualism retrospective know I analyzed the games that Suda developed while making a name for himself in the West, I barely gave attention to the rest of his library, including the ones only available in Japan for several years, namely The Silver Case, Flower, Sun, and Rain, and the 25th Ward. This will be less of an analysis and more of an introduction to some of these games, so don't expect any real spoilers. Some people, including fans of Grasshopper's work, might feel intimidated by these older games that look obscure the second you look at them. But I'm just like most fans. I didn't learn about Goichi Suda, or Suda51, until No More Heroes released, which I only heard about because it gained popularity among regular gaming communities for being the odd one out in the Wii's exclusive library infested with family-friendly titles. It was only after experiencing this amazing game that searching up the company's name on 2008 internet led me to hunting for a secondhand copy of Killer 7 and came across this alluring phrase. I'm not making Kill the Past sound grandiose, am I? Because I don't think it is, really. It's simply an idea that Suda really likes to run with and has been for decades at this point. However, it is an important part of the story behind the games he has written and directed. It's also the lesson he wants to teach people since it's something he lives by. In order to better understand what Suda means by kill the past, it'll be worth taking a look at the games he had at hand that predate the formation of Grasshopper Manufacture. Super Fire Pro Wrestling Special was the first story he got to write for a video game. It was only on the Super Famicom in Japan, so to experience it yourself, you'd need to be fluent in the language. Long story short, it's about a man named Morio Smith who worked his way to the top in order to become the ultimate champion of the wrestling league, but it cost him everything in life that made him happy. Much of it is coming from his rival being absolutely evil, killing his tag team partner and coach, although it also came from his own shortcomings, what with his girlfriend leaving him once he became too obsessed with his career. In the end, he was unable to live with himself and what this championship cost him, so he takes his own life. The story itself caused an uproar from fans of the Fire Pro Wrestling series up to that point, sending death threats to Human Entertainment for letting someone write such a harrowing story. This was still the period where video games weren't really taken seriously when it came to the subject of storytelling, mind you. However, it gave the series a lot of attention at the time anyway, so Human wasn't too bent out of shape about it. All publicity is good publicity, right? Goichi Suda remained with them for a few years. He would end up directing and writing the sequel to Twilight Syndrome, a survival horror game about students hunting urban legends of the paranormal variety. Right before being given that opportunity, Suda was shoved into this title's development team because the original director of the first game abruptly left the entire production when it was near completion. I suppose things went well enough to let him create the sequel with complete creative control. This game would be known as Moonlight Syndrome. However, this would be the only case for Suda's involvement in the Syndrome games, as he left the company shortly after Moonlight launched, and since then it is considered completely non-canonical due to how absurdly different it is from the rest of the series, focusing more on psychological horrors and mental dysfunction of people, rather than ghosts and paranormal horrors the series became known for. These two games can be considered the Prometheus and Patient Zero of Suda's perspective when it comes to creating games. The story of Morio Smith is about a man that ends up taking his own life, a fate he preferred over the purgatory of stagnation caused by his past that he couldn't let go of. While a very simple story of a professional wrestler, it can relate to Suda's kill the past idea while focusing on a man who wasn't able to do so. And in regards to Moonlight Syndrome, it shares a fair number of plot points and commentary on things like rapid urbanization that are further explored in The Silver Case. So I think it's safe to say Suda's own original ideas for video games are already brewing inside of his mind during this time. While these two games probably feel like a lifetime ago to Suda, he hasn't forgotten them. A company known as Spike owns these properties and released Fire Pro Wrestling World in 2017 for PS4 and PC. Suda got involved in the marketing and recently announced that he's working on a separate story DLC for the game that serves as a sequel to the Morio Smith story. And I'd imagine he'll depict it in a way to fill us in on the original tale. It comes out next month, so try to take a look. The base game is on the cheaper side, and I can guarantee that it isn't as glitchy and unstable as your more modern wrestling games. Seeing as how Suda is playing nice with the owners of Moonlight Syndrome, I wouldn't be surprised if he's looking into bringing the game to current platforms in some way, shape, or form. Until then, you can find cheap copies online, and there's an English guide for the first disc. Keep in mind though that non-Japanese PS3 consoles cannot play the game without modding, as the discs themselves were region locked. Now getting into the company Suda51 formed on his own, comprised of himself and a handful of other developers, some that followed him from Human Entertainment. Their first title was The Silver Case, which launched on PlayStation 1 in 1999, exclusively in Japan. Fast forward 17 years later, in which it received an HD remaster on PS4 and PC, making it easy to pick up on the PlayStation Network or Steam, where it goes on sale for cheap and very often. The game is a visual novel, but presents itself in a completely different style than any other of the genre. Rather than having characters facing each other or the player with limited animation, the Silver Case uses an engine that allows them to place, shift, or reshape the text box whenever they so choose. Characters are portrayed through still images and artwork, and the art style tends to completely change between chapters and scenarios. This unique and ambitious presentation is why I recommend you have a pen and paper ready when you start playing. Just write down the character names and maybe title it under which chapter you're on, because not having them on display all the time makes it tough for filthy gaijins such as us who aren't used to these kinds of names. So taking the moment to write them down will make it easier to keep track. Many show up in later chapters looking completely different because of the art styles. If we were dealing with silly pun names lapelled on cartoonish characters, this wouldn't be an issue at all. But Silver Case is depicted as a more realistic crime drama filled with eccentric but believable characters using unique methods of visualizing the story. Most of the game is text-based as it is though. There aren't any character models to speak of, and everything is visually presented in artwork or occasional animation. While there are puzzles at times, they do give you an option to auto-solve them. I'm reluctant to even call them puzzles since the solution is either trial and error or it's spelled out for you. Therefore, don't think you're a brainlet if you just want to use the auto-solving mechanic. The game mostly revolves around the Heinous Crimes Unit, or HCU, solving mysteries they believe are led by a serial killer known as Kamui, while also dealing with the politics and more personal occurrences within this town. Sometimes you even deal with personal shit going on between characters. Some may need a quick cash, potential office romance, things like that. What else is there to say about the game? Without outright spoiling things, it does provide a scope into what would become the present many years later. The dangers of data collection, suburban youth seeking the internet for guidance or safe haven, and how it can cause severe repercussions to the real world. A lot of the topics explored in the Silver Case are still relevant today. It makes you think Suda is some kind of clairvoyant. But enough talk about predicting the future. Isn't this supposed to be about killing the past? Well, the Silver Case is the first real trial of this idea, and it proves its foundation. The past and the grip it can have on you is exemplified through the game's characters, especially Kamui, which you'll have to just see for yourself. This game also stands as not only a foundation for Kill the Past, but also for what he wanted his games to be about. You really step into his mind when you play through the Silver Case.
The Silver Case plays out in an episodic format. Overall, there are 4 different stories. This was my first original game, but there were 4 different games that I wanted to make. So this game has everything I wanted to express and create. There are various inspirations in there, but I want people to see the Silver Case as the coalescence of everything I wanted to do at the time, and my passion.
So, have the 3 P's with this game and you'll do just fine. Pen, paper, and patience. It takes some time for the story to get going, but once it does, it won't stop, and you'll never be able to guess where it ends. The game also has 2 separate campaigns, one following the main protagonist, whom you give a name, although he's commonly known as Akira according to the demo and fan wikis. This is Transmitter, which was written by Suda himself, and there's also Placebo, which follows a man named Tokyo researching the cases that the main protagonist is tackling, mainly written by Masahi Uka. Also, please refer to this chart for the best way to experience both stories simultaneously. While Tokyo's story has a lot more of you doing menial tasks, he puts each main case into greater context to help you understand what's going on. Thanks to Twitter user Ro for making this chart. The next original Grasshopper manufactured game would be Flower, Sun and Rain from 2001, an early PlayStation 2 title released exclusively in Japan. It was able to make its way overseas through the Nintendo DS about 7 years later. The game's visuals are downgraded to a staggering level, but it still does a satisfactory job providing the experience of the original game. While not handled by Grasshopper firsthand, they were involved as supervisors, and this version is considered faithful. For the most part. Flower, Sun and Rain revolves around a man named Sumio Mando, sent out to an island known as Los Paz in order to stop a terrorist plot dedicated to bombing planes, in which you fail, and fail again. In this seemingly endless cycle. What's going on in this adventure of murder and mystery? That's for you to find out. While not a visual novel like The Silver Case, the game still revolves heavily around talking to people and solving puzzles. However, the puzzle solutions are all numeric, require your silver case, and the solutions to the main puzzles are all sprawled across a guidebook you can access in your case's menu. While a physical version of the guide would be preferred and actually was sold in Japan back when the game originally launched, it's only in Japanese, so if you're an English player on the DS, you'll just have to make do with the in-game guide. Suda has mentioned that he wants to eventually release this game for current platforms, but for now, this is the only way people that aren't fluent in Japanese can experience the game. There's also lots and lots of walking. I'm gonna be straight with you. If you have the patience for Death Stranding, you have what it takes to play through Flower, Sun and Rain. Without a doubt. How's the story within Lost Past though? Well, it is set in the same world as the Silver Case, so you should play that first as some events in Flower, Sun and Rain are related. As you talk to the many people staying in this beautiful hotel, you get the feeling that they choose to remain in this so-called paradise. While many have a past that haunts them to this day, they choose to remain here and let the world go on without them. Sumio understands this, but doesn't respect it, being very short and blunt with nearly everyone he comes across. This all relates to the theme of Kill the Past, as Sumio sees these people's notions not to advance forward with their lives and either helps them make peace with what's troubling them, or push them through in order to keep progressing. In a lot of ways, the titular hotel is the worst fate that could happen to someone, for it nullifies the opportunity to drop their past and move on, since it plays into the idea that you're reliving the same day over and over again. You want some advice on starting Flower, Sun and Rain? Well, the DS version is the only one in English, and prices online still seem pretty low, at least stateside. So if you don't want to wait for a port/remake/remaster, fish one out on eBay. If it comes with the instruction booklet, take a look before starting the game. And if it doesn't, the first puzzle you come across is merely asking for your birthday. Be sure to just use your own so you don't forget it. It'll be important later on. There's also a ton of extra puzzles in the game, but you'll know how to differentiate once you start playing. The extra puzzles are completely optional and lead to bonus costumes and in-game models to observe, so they aren't necessarily important to find and solve. Next is the paradigm shift for Grasshopper manufacturer as well as Suda51 himself. I'm speaking of Killer 7, released originally in 2005. What can I say about this game that I haven't already? A cult classic if there ever was one. Seriously, they're practically giving this game away on Steam every other week and you still won't play it. Says now more than ever that this game was destined to be niche from the very beginning. You play as a man known as Garcian Smith who wields 6 other personas that completely take their own form at his command. You're assigned to take on a league of gangly terrorists known as Heaven's Smile, who are hell-bent on causing the downfall of humanity. Aided by your chief and leader known as Harmon Smith, the Killer 7 Syndicate is America's only hope for salvation. While no other game in existence plays like Killer 7, it isn't complex at all. The on-rails movement options and controls take some time to get accustomed, but are pretty simple once you understand how it all works by the end of the first mission. The puzzles are never anything too demanding either, but the Heaven Smiles themselves are your real threats, coming in so many shapes and sizes, demanding a different way of dealing with each of them. I still have a hard time really describing the story and world in a neat little fashion because there's so much going on from beginning to end. Exploring the political relationships between countries, as well as deep-seated corruption and lust for executive power. Suda really put his finger on the pulse when it came to these kinds of topics back in the early 2000s. This game is absolutely an obscure, borderline demented depiction of Americana that's like nothing ever created before. While you're trying to make sense of what's happening in this perilous world, you're dealing with the many ghosts and remnant psyches harassing you and filling you in on what all of this could possibly mean. The relation this game has with spirituality and past lives is very important to the story. I think my buddy Dreambaum said it best. In Killer 7, the best way to understand the world is to stop living in it. What is its relation to Kill the Past, though? Well, many of the characters speak heavily on the topic of America's history with Japan and how deeply rooted these issues are, that the idea of world peace the country's leaders sold to everyone was still a mere pipe dream, even with nuclear weapons being abolished. There's also the character's own history to speak of. Who is Garcian? How did he become the assassin that he is? Are the rest of the Smiths just living tools for him, or does he have a history with them as well? All of this will be answered very cryptically as you complete the game. Also, this is the point where continuity does start to get muddy for all of Suda's games. Much of this had to do with elements of the story Suda removed under his own accord. While the games do appear to share a world, how exactly that's the case is still left unanswered, but who's to say how that will change with his future titles? What's much more important is the one chain that really binds all these games together, which is the theme of Kill the Past. So please, from the bottom of my heart, play Killer 7. It's an absolutely insane and unforgettable experience. The original version was for the Nintendo GameCube, but the PC port on Steam is pretty much perfect with its upscale resolution and fully remappable controls that include mouse aiming. Just don't settle for the PlayStation 2 port, it plays and looks significantly worse. Even Suda has taken the time to express that they were not involved in that port and that he doesn't consider it to be a suitable experience.
May the Lord smile.
And the devil have mercy.
Our last main stop for now will be the 25th Ward, a direct sequel to the Silver Case, originally made for mobile platforms in Japan. These, I think. Not only was the game removed from digital storefront about 6 years after its release, but it was only available for cell phone providers that supposedly Suda's own phone at the time wasn't a part of. Not that it matters anymore since it got completely remade for PS4 and PC back in 2018. No longer is it an unattainable game lost in the mist of time. What do you need to know besides the fact that it's a visual novel that goes even beyond Silver Case's unconventional nature? Well, for one, it's absolutely batty. If you're to compare the style of Silver Case and Killer 7, you can see Suda gave himself the freedom to explore heavier themes and lean towards a more disturbing perspective for the latter. And 25th Ward feels like he's continuing Silver Case's story, but with that dark part of him fully embraced. The visual style of this game is also set up from how the Silver Case was presented, despite being originally made for mid-2000s mobile phones. While still not utilizing character models once again, it has more dynamic camera angles and in-game animation. The gameplay and movement options are also somewhat simplified, possibly due to being firstly made for mobile phones, but it considerably expects you more often to figure things out on your own than the Silver Case did. Some moments are real head scratchers, but others seem more like small tests to make sure you're paying attention to the characters and what they're saying. Other times it's pure trial and error, but still wildly different from Silver Case's puzzling situations. Describing the game is also kind of tricky, so let's just say it focuses on rapid urban development, the non-stop evolution of the internet, as well as the social decay and dehumanization of people's private lives as portrayed in this gigantic apartment building that's a centerpiece to the game's story. Think server rooms when you look at this complex. And regarding its relation to Kill the Past, it's something that's put in the forefront during certain occurrences in the game, especially when it comes to Tokyo, a character from the original title's Placebo chapters. A good way to describe the feel of the 25th Ward, to an extent, is if you've ever listened to Year Zero by 9 Inch Nails, an album that's also focused on fear of the future and what could lead to the downfall of humanity. Of course, that album focused more on government misdeeds, leading to an absolute dystopia by the year 2022. Oh, just a couple years away, we're almost there. Although much of this album's presentation was filled with cryptic insight and alluring mystery, much like this game. The way it conveys its own story is so fantastic and pulls off things I would have never imagined from a visual novel, but I'd rather not show them all off here. Accompanying these endearing visuals are fantastic compositions. The entire story is parted into 3 separate routes, each with its own unique composer and character artist. One of these main composers being Akira Yamaoka of Silent Hill fame, who also worked on the more modern Grasshopper titles. Please see and hear for yourself, as the PC and PS4 versions are perfectly suitable. Although I think it'll be best to play it after Silver Case and Flower, Sun, and Rain. Also be sure to play the chapters in this order for the best experience. Oh, and don't forget that pen and paper.
Huh? Oh, don't mind me. I'm just on the old grind. The ancient art of grabbing big, hairy coconuts is nothing if not cathartic. Anyway, I hope you plan to look into the great games I've recommended so far, because Grasshopper is usually allergic to good marketing. Connoisseurs such as us have to pick up the slack. I mean, just look at these charts. So, take a look around. Maybe they're on sale right now on Steam or other websites. And maybe you can take those extra bucks you saved and browse the badass clothes you can find at Suda51's NYC. Haha, oh yeah. But wait, stop the music for a second. More important than the cyberpunk-esque Senjutsu tee, more important than the Oni Baba dad hat, perhaps more important than anything else right now. As you guys should know, all of Suda51's products are comprised of original pieces, each by very talented artists. In a world full of soulless brands that just steal assets and artwork from anime, it's great seeing one that clearly loves Japanese culture and entertainment, but has a more creative way to show that, which directly supports artists from all around the world. With that said, I'm extremely happy to announce the latest and greatest piece, an original created by a Grasshopper manufacture veteran who most recently drew the in-game portraits for Travis Strikes Again, Yusuke Isao. This piece is known as Untitled Villain. Sure, it almost feels like a dream that they pulled this one off. Grab this beautifully abstract piece today at sukaban.nyc.
While the 25th Ward is considered to be the last game in Suda51's library to be directly related to Kill the Past, it still tends to creep up as a subject here and there. However, we can't say it's an absolute focus for most of his games afterward. While Kill the Past isn't really in the framework of games like No More Heroes, Shadows of the Damned, or Killer is Dead, you might feel its spirit pass through the story like an ominous gust of wind. So the idea of Kill the Past is prominent in the 4 games I've described, but it's still a vague notion, right? What is it and how is it supposed to help you? It's basically a testament to how people let the past shape them into what they are for the worse, without doing anything about it. Folks tend to say, you can learn from your past, but that alone doesn't help. You also have to get rid of that past completely, start a new chapter in your life without it. In the world of Kill the Past, remaining stagnant is a fate worse than death. It's not saying you'll be a better or worse person for getting rid of your past because that's never a definite, but whatever it is won't be as self-destructive and soul-crushing as remaining where you are with it weighing you down. This is what many of the main characters throughout Suda's Kill the Past games learn in their journeys. The protagonist in The Silver Case, Sumio in Flower, Sun and Rain, even Travis in No More Heroes. How exactly we would rather you see for yourself. Even if you've played any of these games before learning about Kill the Past, go through it again. You'll likely find a lot more to appreciate. Who knows, you might even come up with some theories of your own on where Suda came up with these kinds of stories in the first place.
So einfach ist der Kontrast zwischen Tokio und Nagano für mich nicht. Beide haben dunkle und helle Seiten. Mit Nagano verbinde ich auch schlechte Dinge. Darüber kann ich mit niemandem reden. Das trage ich nur mit mir aus. Aber heute habe ich das Gefühl, wieder willkommen zu sein.
Kill the past sometimes means leaving your past behind. Other times it means facing yours or another person's past head-on to destroy it. Without the phrase being outright stated, I think it's fair to say it returned for Suda's latest game, Travis Strikes Again. A common idea is that creators put a piece of their soul into their work. Whether it's through the presentation or the characters themselves, this medium becomes a form of expression. Suda is absolutely no exception to this. I might be reiterating some things I've said in my previous analysis, but I think it's important for the sake of this video. These games are all a part of this theme as we discussed, but they can also be seen as a vision into his passion, the things he finds the most intriguing, the things he can relate to, the things he fears above all else. What Suda puts into titles like The Silver Case and Killer 7 are ideas he most likely had before he even started making games. In 2008, Grasshopper Manufacture had hundreds of doors open for the company thanks to the release and reception of No More Heroes. While working with Capcom to make Killer 7 was certainly prestigious in its own right, it didn't give him a lot of attention in the West. No More Heroes is what put the company on the map when it came to Western market appeal. It gave Suda and his company a lot of credit and publisher opportunities as they became known for unique, visceral game concepts and design. However, it cost Suda a lot more than he probably realized back then. Being the CEO of a game company means having a ton of responsibilities. I'm sure that workload was smaller and gave him ample time to direct and write games when his team was comprised of like 5 people. But once Grasshopper Manufacture started growing, working deals with publishers such as Marvelous, EA, WB, and the reach of his company extending greatly, he got so caught up with said deals, maintaining the business and marketing said projects, that he resided into vague roles that started with words like executive and creative for most of these projects. He fell into this years-long plan that led him to losing a part of himself and his passion for game development. As Let It Die was finishing production in 2016, Suda got a call from a particular company. He was offered an opportunity to develop a Nintendo Switch exclusive release with their support, and when he gazed upon that simple little Joy-Con, his mind started to form the idea for a game he would want to direct on his own once again. That game ended up being the small return of Travis Touchdown. Releasing more than 10 years after his last gig as main director, this project became a trip through Suda's dormant mind, as it is a depiction of what the game industry has been like for him, the brightest and darkest events of his personal history all coming together. It also seems to get even more personal than that, diving into his memories of what it was like witnessing the wonders of arcade games when he was just a little kid, and the aimless feeling of being a college dropout looking for his place in life without a clear path on where he should go. In a lot of ways, the Death Ball worlds in Travis Strikes Again heavily represent Suda's own timeline. titles developed by an in-game character known as Dr. Juvenile, who has her own dark past that Travis learns about throughout this entire ordeal. Travis being an analog for the explorer of Suda's innermost turmoils and career history is appropriate, considering this is the character he identifies with and the one that made all of this possible for him in the first place. One more thing to get the noggin jogging when analyzing Travis Strikes Again: Dr. Juvenile is a creator in this world, being a game developer that made all these death balls to begin with, and Travis is dubbed the Destroyer multiple times. This plays into the idea of kill the past in a lot of ways for the story, and is an analog for Suda killing his own past in order to find his passion and creativity once again. Suda has iterated multiple times why he made Travis Strikes Again the way he did, why he made it with a small crew and even smaller budget. While part of the reason was to basically remind people that this game series exists to begin with and gauge interest once again, Suda hasn't directed a full team to create a game for over 10 years. He needed to reteach himself what that's like. Only then can he effectively make something as bombastic as a true third iteration to No More Heroes with a team comprised of over 100 people. He also really wanted to give everyone an idea of what the past decade has been like for him, the highest highs and lowest lows. And that's something that deserves respect above all else when it comes to Suda51 and his career. Travis Strikes Again, No More Heroes was a power move he made at the industry and gaming communities that had him stay silent for so long. Through the game, he found himself creating in his own way, regardless of what other people thought, and that's when he is at his absolute best.
Ich dachte immer, er wird mal Modedesigner. Er hatte schon damals diese Styler-Klamotten an. Was andere darüber gedacht haben, war ihm egal. Er wollte nur sein eigenes Ding machen. Deshalb ist er heute wohl auch so erfolgreich.
The journey doesn't end with Travis Strikes Again either. You can read more on Kill the Past through Dreambaum's article discussing it further between each game, as well as the subject of continuity within these titles. He also has introductory descriptions and links towards extra pieces of Suda's work outside of his games, such as Case 4.5, a novella which relates to the Silver Case, Kuriyami Dance, which is a 2-volume manga series based on Suda's youth period, as well as Kill the Past, sprinkled with elements of his cancelled game once known as Kuriyami before it was morphed into Shadows of the Damned, and Red, Blue, Green, a short story written by Suda for his current art book that possibly serves as a bridge between the 25th Ward and No More Heroes 3. All of these works have been fully and accurately translated by fans. You can find where to experience them through Dreambaum's article. So, if you've only played the 2 main iterations of No More Heroes and find the wait for the upcoming sequel excruciating, it doesn't have to be. Please, take the time to experience these almost indescribable games, not just because of the multiple hints implying that they'll be important to fully understand the plot of No More Heroes 3.
Yes, the tiger has awakened. Red, green, dark, black, blood.
But because they're wonderful titles with fantastic stories that have so many personal layers to help you understand Suda51 as a creator and everything he's been through. Thanks for watching. Another big old shout out to the awesome people that helped me write this entire project out. Seriously, if you go on Twitter at all, definitely give these guys a follow. They were a huge help in making this video and helping me understand further what this Kill the Past theme is about. Big thanks to Suda51's for supporting me with this video and making this amazing shirt by Yusuke Isao possible. And if you're new to my channel, check out my analysis series on the mainline Grasshopper titles. And of course, big thanks to my patrons for continuing to support me. If you're interested in becoming a patron, check out the link below and get in on things like voting for upcoming side projects as well as early previews to videos I'm working on in the future.
Let's play a game.